New camera position, new bracket made. Might be able to get some better shots now without having the camera microphone stuffed in my ear. Okay, let's get these bolsters put on this knife. This is some 5.7mm thick brass. I've put it on the mill and flattened it off and sanded it clean. That's roughly going to be the shape of the bolster, something like that. So to mount these bolsters, what I'm going to do is first drill a 6mm hole. I've centre punched it there so that I can locate the bolster, because although the pivot pin will actually be 6mm, the bushing will go through the liner and it will butt up against the brass. Okay, well, it's a good job I checked. I was about to drill a 6mm hole. It's actually 5mm hole. So there we go. So what I'll do is put the 5mm pin in. We'll put the 6mm bushing in, and that's basically the liner locked in place. Before I do any soldering though, I'll take some of this down a little bit on the bandsaw just to save grinding. I'll just cut this off roughly to my shape, finished shape. So somewhere there. I'll just do a bit of carving, should we, on the bandsaw, and they can be soldered on. I've drilled those through with the 5mm pin. They're located just with the bushing. What I am going to do now is I am going to shape the inside faces there. So I'm going to grind these out, that and that, because I can't really get to that once it's soldered on. And once they are ground, I will then split this again, super glue together, but at least I know the faces are matching. I will then split it and I will solder one on each side of the liners. As long as you get a straight line across here, a dead straight line, and when you come to solder up with the bushing and the locating pin in there, you're always going to be able to just put the two liners together. And you're always going to be able to line the bolsters up on each side when you solder them on, so everything will be matching and even on each side. Okay, we're shaped-ish. As long as they're done and that, I'm not bothered. That's what the wood will sit up against. And all this will be ground off when I solder them onto the liners. So just got to separate these now. If they don't go, then I'll just soak them in acetone. Sometimes they don't. Brass being soft, you can damage the brass, so it's gone. There you go. I think that one I'll have to soak it in acetone. But yeah, I'm going to flat these inside faces off now, really clean them up, and then solder them on the relevant liners. Okay, so what I do to centre the liner in the kind of little bolster on the outside, I put the bush and the pin in place with the liner. What I then do is temporarily clamp that with a G-clamp. I then set up just a couple of nuts and bolts, literally just on the corners like that, just to hold the thing in place. Then I can take the pin out. So now I can run a little bead of solder, soft solder, all the way around this edge, and just in there. Capillary action should pull the solder in and we'll get a good bond on there. I have found that if you just put a G-clamp in one place like that, it can move, but also the brass can distort because it is soft, and as it heats up it goes even softer, so you can put a nasty impression on the liner of the brass with your actual mole grips. So you can, as you heat that up now, when you take your mole grips off, you'll either have a buckled piece of brass or you'll have a nasty mark in your brass, but that doesn't really do anything. And these are getting ground away and shaped to the bolsters. Now, because the bolsters have been ground identically, super glued together, you're now able to mark them when you set them up on each side. So if you set one bolster up, put the pin in, I put a line across the spine, I can then take the other liner, put the two together without them bolted, and I can mark that line across onto that side, which I can then set up the other bolster exactly in place. And I put a mark top and bottom, so I actually know that when these eventually go together, then the bolster is going to be perfectly in line with the blade, and it's as simple as that. So I'm just going to go and put some solder on these now. Literally just got these soldered up. That's all. They're just literally just holding those corners. So soldered all the way around. A little bit of clean up to do, not very much, but it cleans off really nice. This with even with a sharp knife you can clean it off. But I'll take all these apart, and then I can show you that they line up perfectly. That one's still hot. So is that one. So as you can see, those two are now perfectly lined up along the top and along the bottom. You'll see it better when I clean all this solder off. I've just given these just a little clean up, and just to reveal the solder for you. Ideally that's how you want your soldering to look, just like part of the liner on the end as well there. It will actually clean up a little bit nicer than this, because I've only just gone towards the liner. These liners need taking down a little bit, so it'll look really clean and nice that when it's cleaned off. There's no, what I'm getting at, there's no big thick solder line in there. It's just the brass is pretty tight together. So now my job is to fit the wooden scales onto these bolsters. So my biggest obstacle now really is which wood am I going to use. The wood I'm going with is this spalted beech. This is what the customers picked, and this lace wood, London plain. Just need to sort of pick the best bits of it. It's kind of like a little gremlin, that one there. But these scales are going to be 6mm thick. How I transfer the pattern off that onto the front of the timber is with a little bit of tape and some paper, just to make a pattern. Tape that on there because I do not want it to move. Then if you rub that hard enough, it will cut through the paper. That then gives me my perfect impression of the front. Well, normally the piece that's left after I've cut out, I will put it over the wood and position it on the timber so that I can obviously see through and see what the scale's going to look like. I'll cut another one in a second. So just mark those. Get the rest of them done. I quite like just sort of that main bit of spalt in there being in the centre like that, so I think that looks quite nice. So that's the section I will actually put the paper liner on and cut out. So the paper template will go there. Let's tip that up a bit and that'll be cut out. I'll stick that on there. Now when I cut this, I will cut it slightly over on the back end of it, so that just in case when I do cut this, if I just mess up a little bit and I need to keep reworking it and fitting it up, I've got enough timber on the back end here and I don't end up being short, so it shouldn't need much more than sort of that much, just a few millimetre there. And get all these glued on. The lace wood is probably going to be, that looks really nice, that. Yeah, so I'll probably go there with the lace wood. Because these scales are book matched, it's pretty easy to get the other side, well, what will be identical to the other side. Just a simple grid marked off the other one. And that's all I use, that prick glue, just to put these on. All I really need to do now is cut around these on the bandsaw. Then I can just cut off, leave plenty of waste on there on the bandsaw, then take this to the grinder and very carefully just grind to that paper. I've ground these and I've just had the little file on them. If you do sort of shapes like that, you're always going to have to get in that corner there with a file to clean it out and make it a nice tight fit. I've done all four exactly the same. So what I've done now is mark the back with the pencil, and I'm just going to go and trim that off on the bandsaw. Just take all the excess away, and then I can get these epoxied on. These backs have been completely flattened off, utterly flattened off, on paper, on the surface table. So they are flat, flat, flat. I've textured all the brass, and I've dimpled the scales. I'll have a texture in with the carbide burr so that it holds plenty of epoxy. You get kind of little pegs blending into the pegs or the divots on the brass. That will give a really good bond. Then further on, when we get the pins in, that will give a further bond to hold everything together. So I'm going to clean all this up now with acetone, get them epoxied, get the scales epoxied onto the liners. Well, I'm going to let them set up now for 24 hours. Then we'll come back, clean everything off, and get this little folder assembled. We're at the finishing stages now, guys. So thank you to my patrons. Thanks for watching. Give a thumbs up, thumbs down, like, share, comment, relax, chill out, do whatever you want. Okay guys, bye for now.